Welcome to the Benjamin Dixon Show. My name is Anoa. I am here with Nick. Nick, introduce yourself.
Hi guys, I'm Nick now and I'm here on the side.
Awesomeness. We are filling in for Ben this evening.
What's happening?
Okay, don't know where the music just came from, but not really sure what's going. Ah, it's the YouTube channel. Sorry, everybody. I opened up the YouTube channel to be able to look at the chat so I can see what you guys are saying, and there is a commercial for Empire. So I couldn't understand, like, where's the music come from? You know, I like Empire. Um, Empire is, I mean, it's my, sorry, it's still, see? And now I'm talking, so I'm like royally screwing up tonight. But it's okay, because it's great to laugh a little bit, right? Got to laugh at yourself a little bit. Filling in tonight for Ben. We're filling in tonight for Ben. Ben is out on an adventure. He's actually tested out the new studio. So, hi, Ben. Hope you're having fun. And Ben will be back on Monday live in action from David Packerman's studio. That's pretty exciting. And tomorrow night, Thursday, Niz and Richard, I believe, will be back. They have a brand new name and show for us, so it's very exciting to see what they've come up with on their little hiatus. So definitely come back, check them out. Niz and Richard are on from 7 to 9. And then, well, actually, no, Ben is back tomorrow. Ben goes from 9 to 10. So if you're new to the channel, thank you so much for joining us. Please hit subscribe if you like what you see so far. If you've seen any of the videos, please share the videos. Also hit us up on Twitter. At the BBD Show, and at Progressive Army. So Nick and I are just going to chit-chat with you. We're going to talk a little bit about, some of the news that's been happening today, and then also we're going to have a conversation around about 9:30 or so. Stacey Hopkins is going to talk to us about the brand new Congress, which I didn't quite get to last night, but some of you may have seen there was a really good Huffington Post article about it today. I mean, there's just a lot of buzz. As we're moving forward, the news media has somehow taken Bernie's speech last night and ran with the whole he's throwing a towel in. No. We're not just going to the convention. We are in this for the long game, okay? This is far from over. So I just had a few things I ran across today in the news, and then Nick, if there's anything you want to talk about. With the Summer Olympics coming up within less than 100 days, Rio, yay, all the games. There's been an issue in Rio, though, with a surge in unarmed police killings. The story I saw today, and it mentioned that one of the victims was a young child. So there have been, like, the level of homicides thus far, according to a report from Amnesty International, is like 10% greater than the same period in 2015. And they've also noted that, the majority of the victims, similar to here in the United States, have been young black men from favelas or other marginalized areas. If you've ever seen, just to get kind of like a context, if you're not really sure what a favela is, I mean, if you've ever seen the movie City of God, that's not a favela, but there is a favela Josina right next to it. But that's a similar area and demographic we're talking about. Same, when I was in Brazil in law school, one of the things I thought about was man, we went on a favela tour. That poverty tours is a whole nother story, and I objected to it, but it was a part of the study abroad program, and I had to do it for a grade. But anyway, we went into 2 different favelas at different points in our trip. I remember driving through one at night, and I turned to my friend Shaquana, who's from Brooklyn, and I was like, dude, don't this look like the Bronx? Like the little bodega set up, just like people look like us, right? And we don't think about that when we travel and we go someplace else, but the paper I wrote was a hood is a hood, and so we see this similar issue. We start talking about the Black Lives Matter movement and whether yelling and interrupting people actually does anything. This is a global movement, and as we see here in Rio, there is an issue, especially as they're trying to clear out areas to make it more presentable and acceptable for tourists coming in for the Olympic Games coming up this summer. There's also been an issue with criminalizing, free speech and free of assembly activity, right, as they're moving forward towards the Olympic Games. So that was rather interesting, and it also ties into the points from that the president raised as he's touring on his European tour, about how shouting people down in these protest movements do not really accomplish, and we need to sit down and talk to people. Well, you have this case in Brazil. I don't really know what sitting down and talking to people about treating people decently and humanly is going to do in that case. So I thought that was an interesting tidbit. There was
I
another
wanted to break in
Oh, go ahead.
for an announcement. It says that Niz and Richard aren't going to be here
Oh, they're
tomorrow.
not going to
They're
be
going to
here
be
tomorrow.
returning next week.
Okay, so there's 3 Thursdays off. Okay, so Niz and Richard will be back next Thursday, and you can come back here tomorrow at 9 p.m. And check out the Benjamin Dixon Show with Benjamin Dixon. Promise. Another story I saw today was it was an interesting note, right? Like, we have people who go to jail for all types of things. We have people, particularly when we're talking about the GOP. It's always interesting when the GOP has a scandal and like it's brushed under the rug, or they apologize, or we have like 50 people write a letter about how such a good man or good person of Christ that person is. Hassard, right? Who it's now come out that he molested children. And it is not really a big story. It was announced, it was said that it happened, and then the letter from the different people who've known him within the party is like 40 people, I think, signed onto a letter about how he's a good person and he's always done good work, as if somehow whatever he's allegedly done could rehab the fact that he was a child molester. There's an interesting piece in the Chicago Tribune today that talks about how for nearly 30 years, he presented himself as a champion of children, when in fact, under that time, he was violating children himself. But the fact that it's not a bigger story, right? Like, one of the most longest-serving, powerful people, a former U.S. House Speaker, could do such a thing. Like, it's just like, oh yeah, that happened. We seem to have, as a nation, we seem to have like this, I don't know. It's just like, oh, okay, they did something, but we have these huge issues with the people who represent us, the people who hold such power, and we seem so willing to just brush it aside or not even really address it and deal with it and what it means for the culture as a whole, particularly when we talk about the GOP that is so polarizing on these moral issues, when we have so many, senators and congressmen coming forward with various scandals or illegal activity, repulsive, reprehensible activity, right? So I think the conversation about whether or not, these things should be a larger story, I think that's an interesting point, and maybe that should be a large story. Maybe we're tired of people's personal business and trash. I think in the case of this, where we're talking about crimes committed, I mean, it's something that we should be talking about. And then I know that Nick had something he wanted to talk about with the Arizona lawsuit. I did read something about that earlier today.
Yeah, that was basically the judge threw out the case, and there's some weird things that was said about the actual case that really kind of troubled me, and I'm glad you're on, because now you can help me kind of decipher what I'm going to interpret it means. So one of the county and the Secretary of State, their first comment, their first I guess argument would have been that the case was neither timely nor well prepared. So they wanted to get it dismissed on those grounds, but I guess the judge took it under advisement and he let it move forward for the evidentiary hearing. Does that sound right?
Yeah, so from what I read, because I'm gonna be honest with everyone, I have not been like glued to these different lawsuits or whatever, right? Because there's still a lot of other stuff going on. But I think what you said is right. And from what I read earlier, it was that the lawsuit, the threshold for proving fraud, right? Because fraud is the allegation.
Yes.
Not so much that the judge concedes, right? That it probably was bad practice to have so few polling sites, that there were all these issues. But ultimately, he's like, okay, this is something you should have raised before Election Day.
Here's my argument on that. They don't release, the fact that they're going to close down 60 or so or reduce the amount of polling places by 70% weeks in advance, where you actually have time to actually file suit and get a redress before the actual election occurs. So that's almost a moot point. That's really, really strange. And then on top of that, in order for you to prove election fraud, you have to somehow not only be able to prove the fraud, I mean, you have to prove the fraud not only occurred, but it actually would have changed the outcome of the election. So our system, as it stands right now, there's no real paper trail. There's no there's no verification process. So how can such a thing even be attempted to be done? Like if the burden of proof is all on you, they can be as fraudulent as they want to, and there's no burden on them to have to prove that they did anything wrong. I mean, to have to prove they didn't do anything wrong, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
guess as a plaintiff, the burden of proof is on you, but without a verification process or nothing can really come out in discovery that's really going to help you to make your case if there's no real paper trail, right?
Well, yeah, and I think part of the problem too is that they were saying like 100,000. I think the number was like there was a statistician or a mathematician that had some modeling and figures that that they were trying to get admitted, and I think the judge ruled out because there were certain errors that could have been accounted for, and then ultimately the burden was on the lawyer that bringing the suit to prove that 100,000 people had actually been disenfranchised. They hadn't met that high burden, but to the point about it's a moot point. The problem is that when the judge, right, when you go before a judge, like a judge in some cases can decide, okay, I'm gonna consider these other arguments whether you bring them up or not. But for the most part, if you're arguing from a brief or a petition or whatever, and you allege these specific things, that's what the judge is gonna go on. So had what you said, I don't know because I didn't. I'm not gonna say I read the pleadings. I'm not gonna pretend like I read the pleadings or anything because I did not. But from like what you were saying about how you don't really know ahead of time about the polling sites and things of that nature, while that's true, you still do know like a couple of days in advance, which is like how we saw in New York where they had tried to get the emergency hearing and stuff. Okay, so these are not perfect remedies, but the problem is, like I think in these cases with these judges and stuff, they look at, okay, well, you did have an opportunity. Well, that opportunity was only like a window of 12 hours. Well, you still had an opportunity. Like, I agree that's very harsh, and it does not necessarily take into consideration the egregious errors. And like you're saying, like how it's not like for months and months and months where the polling sites are going to be at. I mean, you don't even know. But I think that there's probably room to argue that they had reason to believe because of issues that they had in 2000. Like in Nevada, for example, there were articles like a week out at least about the different issues that they would talk about. Um,
Yeah, but remember
so
they didn't actually release anything saying they were going
no,
to
no, no,
reduce the
that's what no,
polling
no, I
places.
agree. No, no, I agree, and that's what I'm saying. Like, in terms of argument from the legal standpoint, right? When you're going based on the arguments, it's possible that like I said, I have not read the pleadings, so I don't know what the specifics that were alleged. But at the same time, if you're not arguing those specific things that you're arguing, the judge is not going to, unless the judge wants to look favorably. Now, again, they can take this up. This is an appealable decision, so the Court of Appeals could be the next step in that process. So we'll see what happens. In with the New York case, it seems like they are committing, from last I saw, I may have misread this because I misread a couple things today, but it seems like they are willing to count all the provisional ballots, provisional ballots. Now, not saying that actually changes anything, but not saying that will change anything, but it could potentially dent the lead, considering the volume of affidavit ballots that were filed throughout the 5 boroughs at issue. I know there's a push also. I believe last I saw in Erie County, where Buffalo sits, to push for the absentee ballots not absentee ballots, affidavit ballots, because they're called affidavit ballots in New York, to be counted as well. So we'll
And
see. Go
I
ahead.
was going to say, and another argument that the judge made was that another argument put forth, I believe, by the counties, and I think the judge took it under advisement as well, was that election law may not actually apply to presidential preference primaries. And my biggest argument with that is, well, who pays for these primaries? If the taxpayers are paying for those primaries, then I think it should be subject to typical election law. So I think that was a strange argument that was also kind of floating out there. But the bottom line is, from this case, the conclusions I want to draw from this are, with our system being the way it is, there is no legal redress that's really even practical or practically possible for election fraud under our current system. Like, the burden of proof is all on you, and there's no way to prove anything with the way the system is constructed, with no verification methods or anything of that nature. So basically, as it stands right now, there actually could be fraud, and there's no way to prove or disprove. But since you're the plaintiff, you have to prove, and they don't have to disprove. So it's really tilted against you in that respect. And I'm saying, moving forward, what this should show us is that we really need to focus first and foremost on changing the way our voting process is done. In multiple countries, they don't have electronic voting machines due to the fact that they found that they are really easy to affect or change the actual vote. So they're actually outlawed in many countries around the world. Only in the United States do we have such a large amount of electronic voting being like our mainstay of voting. So I just want to bring that to everybody's record. I'm not saying there was 100% sure fraud or anything of that nature. I'm just saying without some kind of verification process and a legal recourse in the event that fraud is likely, that there really is nothing you can really do to contest elections based on this case.
Well, this case doesn't really work that way, right? Because this case is an Arizona state case, right? And the decision this is based on whatever the pleading was, whatever was argued by that particular attorney in that particular case with those particular set of facts, right? All this stuff is very fact specific. And it's true, the burden is on the group bringing the suit, but that's whenever you sue someone, that's what it is.
Yeah,
there are affirmative defenses in some cases and stuff like that. In this case, the burden is on you to prove that the state, the entity did something, fraudulent of this high threshold. I mean, if the threshold was lower, then we could be throwing out, cases, left and right. But I do think that when we look at this versus the way the New York case happened, the New York case, there were not quite the same issues, but similar issues happening in New York. And they, election justice, they try to get out ahead of it, a few days in advance, right? They didn't know specifically what the issues were going to be, but they knew that there was one issue to specifically focus on, and they tried to try to deal with that. So I do agree that you may not know the specifics. You're not going to know the specifics, but what I do agree, and I saw there was a comment about Bernie not addressing this stuff. I don't think that's necessarily true that Bernie doesn't address the election fraud issues. He's referred to it. I'm not really sure what people expect, like in the middle of a race being run. Is he supposed to physically stop and go, if he's supposed to be, we already see how difficult it has been for him to build the momentum, for him to make headway in several states and several communities. So I disagree that he has not addressed the voter fraud. If you're paying attention to mainstream media and news and you're waiting to see a story about it, you're not going to. If you pay attention to his own statements, if you pay attention to the fact that his own lawyers, like he's the first one, along with people locally in Arizona, to actually bring this, because they still have their case. Like this is the case that's brought by people in Arizona, but there's still the case that Bernie's brought. There's still the case that the DNC is bringing. So I disagree that they're not addressing, and it's not voter fraud, because voter fraud is if I'm a voter and I'm committing fraud. It's election fraud, and they have
Did I say voter fraud?
No, not you.
Oh.
The comment in the room, because I mean, I have no problem. You asking a question. I didn't see your question, right? Because we're conversating and we're trying to make sure we're engaging with everyone. I do believe that it is being addressed. Now, could it be addressed more thoroughly and vigorously? Yes, of course. Did they anticipate cheating within the Democratic Party with all the great idealism and stuff? No, I'm sure they didn't. You know what I'm saying? So lessons learned. But at the same time, there are groups like election protection that do exist. There are groups. Here's what we're not understanding, right? There are groups whose job it is to make sure that our elections are fair, that people do have access to the ballot box, right? And there are some of these groups are not doing what they need to be doing. So I get being frustrated because Bernie's not doing something. He's a candidate running for a position, right? So that's what he's focused on.
I think it's also important to remember, like when you're running for election and you lose and you're losing or whatever, and you complain about something like that, like
exactly.
the PR for that is really tough. So you really can't be seen, when you're in the election to be going against the system. It's really going to be incumbent upon people who are outside of the system.
They tackled it in Iowa. in Iowa when it first came up. You know, they were addressing it in Missouri when it came up. Arizona's a glaring issue, and they did have lawyers there working on it. How do I know they had lawyers there working on it before the polls even closed? One of my friends who's out in California, who was there in Arizona, she was there, and they had lawyers right there with them in Phoenix working on this stuff while people were still in line. So to say that, you know, just because you're not hearing about it doesn't mean it's not happening. I don't know that he needs to take out a press release every time he does something. But then from the question, the way people are asking questions, I don't even know if you're someone who actively cares to be involved or if you're just here, you know, throwing stuff out. Another question is, one other statement is, a lot of these groups have been co-opted by the establishment. That's irrelevant. Like, whether they've been co-opted by the establishment or not, election protection, the ACLU, the League of Women Voters, there are all these organizations, they're nonpartisan, they're not supposed to, I mean, there are procedures that you go through. If you do feel that people are falling down the job, then what do you need to do? You need to call them out. Don't sit around complaining about, oh, their establishment. Okay, fine. By now we know there's all these groups that are supposed to get out the vote, right? They're groups that are supposed to register voters. Their establishment. Okay, what does that mean, though? Their establishment. All right, fine, but they still have a job to do, because at the end of the day, whether they're establishment or not, we're all supposed to have the equal right to vote in the United States of America. So it doesn't really matter who they're for or what they're for. You know, people in like New York, the city is being called out on the carpet. No matter how establishment down for Hillary up and down, you know, the chain they still have to be held accountable and do what needs to be done as well. So,
well, but let's be clear though. You know, when you're looking at stuff like this, individuals may be held accountable or whatnot, but the election will stand. There's no recourse for that, and that's what's really important. People can get sacrificed here and there as long as the election results stand. You know, but I think a lot of people feel that there's no recourse.
But there is a period of time before election results are certified, and here and again, everyone needs to know about the rules that apply where you live, because no two elections are handled the same way. In some counties within a state, even, there might not be handled the same way. So I'm not even going to sit here and try and speculate for like all 50 states and Guam and Puerto Rico. What I'm going to say to you all is, if you're someplace in particular and you're having these issues, because here's the other issue, right? This stuff has been going on beyond this election, right? This is not some conspiracy against Bernie, you know. This is a problem in terms of disenfranchising voters from competing against certain interests, period. It's been happening. The issue we had in Arizona was directly a VRA issue. That would not have been permitted to happen had the VRA not been gutted. So we can talk about how the establishment is this, or, you know, it's not fair that this happens, but at the same time, there are recourses. I'm not going to say that there's nothing that can be done. It just is what it is. There is something that can be done, but at the same time, it is a very high threshold. The best thing that we can do is to be organized, to mobilize, and to be educated about actually what the issue is, how, if possible, it can be resolved, and who do we need to contact.
Yeah, my whole point of even bringing it up is really to make us aware that we need to really focus on getting major reforms done to the actual voter process, so that, one, everybody's able to vote, and two, it's all easily verified in an open process that kind of prevents any type of even the appearance of something going afoul. And I think that's what it really comes down to. And to your point, you can't be trying to come after the fact, you know, trying to hurry up and scurry and get things together, you know, and try to bring a case after the fact. You know, you need to already have things on the ground and people on the ground already getting ready to mount that before the issues even get out of hand. I understand that. But what I'm saying is, moving forward, we should create a system, or we should be trying to get a system in place where everything is easily verifiable, no one is disenfranchised, and it's easy to vote, but it's also very, very open. That way, it's less likely to have the appearance of impropriety, basically, is what I'm saying. And that needs to be at the forefront of our politics, because if it is possible, if it's even a shadow of a doubt possible that the appearance of improper behavior is going on, we need to make sure that that's definitely not going on, not here in the United States. And I think that other countries have already shown great models on how voting is to be done, where it's easily verifiable and it's open, and I think we should be looking towards those models and pushing that forward, because it's really hard politically to battle against actually having an open and verifiable voting environment. I think it's really hard to battle against that politically, and this may be something that people can really rally behind and build a coalition on.
I agree. I agree. Speaking of rallying on and building coalitions, there was a really interesting article. Sean King tends to write interesting articles, and basically it's a discussion that we've been having ongoing, right? Are you burning your bus? Are you vote blue? What are you going to do? Which way do we go? Sean King's piece today was basically, I'm not sure I can vote for Hillary Clinton. And he's not willing to say, I'm burning your bus, though. I know you have some thoughts about even the phrasing of burning your bus, Nick. But, he's just like, I do believe in certain things. It's a very personal decision for me. It's a moral decision for me. And I think that's a very real issue for a lot of people right now, right? I mean, we came into this cycle tired of, as the professor said last night, holding our nose to vote, so to speak, right? I personally want to say, regardless of whether you're burning your bus, regardless of whether you are a Hillary supporter, you know exactly who you're voting for, and you're fine with that, good for you. Or if you're someone who's just like, well, I'm here for Bernie, but I will vote for her if she's the nominee because I believe, for whatever reason, that's what I think we do. You know what? More power to all of you who make the choices that you make to vote for who you vote for, because honestly, at the end of the day, that is your right, that is your prerogative. And I do not think that we should put people in negative positions or chastise them because they're not going to vote a certain way. That, honestly, for me as a progressive, right, as someone in this movement, doing that type of thing makes us no better than the establishment we claim to want to distance ourselves from. Like, I don't think that you should be pushing anyone to make a pledge. I mean, I know everyone says, well, that's not what burning your bus is. I hear you. And I do appreciate the thought and energy behind the burning your bus movement. But a lot of people just run with it, and it's not just a movement. It's something to throw over people's heads. It's something to just throw out there. It's something to berate other people about. I like I said before, I manage several different social media pages. We get messages all the time demanding that we post things about take this pledge or do this or do that, or we all have to. I don't have to do anything but stay black and die, like my mama would say, okay? Like, seriously. So I'm with Sean King. Like, I don't think I can vote. I'm not going to say I don't think. I know I can't vote for her. I'm not doing it. Like, I have no problem saying that. However, I'm not going to have your pledge shoved down my throat either. Like, I don't pass judgment on anyone that is burning your bus. I have a lot of friends who are burning your bus. That's great. But I don't see that trying to force all the rest of us to also be burning your bus is even a good strategy on your part. But like Sean King says, I am against the death penalty. I am against super PACs and the unfair influence of billionaires in elections. I'm for $15 minimum wage. I'm for free college tuition. I want to see the prison industrial complex dismantled. Like, not just brick by brick. I just want to see it all torn down, me personally. So I that's just me, and I understand that people are excited about their candidates, they're passionate, we want certain things, but at the same time, I'm not going to turn my back on any of you who feel that you do have progressive ideas or values because you do choose to support Hillary Clinton if she's the nominee in November. I will still break bread with you. Some of y'all got to calm down with some of the very strong rhetoric, but that's just my 2 cents. Because at the end of the day, we need everyone to come together to be able to do the work that we have to do going forward. Nick, yeah. I know you were saying some stuff about it earlier before we started.
I'm just going to say I think the term bust is what everybody kind of picks up on and kind of spins into whatever they believe that really means. Now, me personally, while I agree with the sentiment, I haven't taken the pledge because I just feel like my pledge is my vote. So I'll vote however I'm going to vote on November. I'm not going to vote for Hillary Clinton, but I said I wouldn't do it under any circumstance. Like, you'd have a gun to my head, I still wouldn't vote for her. But that's just because I have my own personal belief. And that belief doesn't have to extend to other people, just like you were saying. But I want to draw a distinction between trying to force a pledge down someone's throat and just trying to get somebody to question, not even so much question, but just to think about, the reality of what they're saying and what they're doing. If someone says, hey, I want to go to the gym and exercise and get in shape, but every time you look at them, they're eating junk food and sitting on the couch watching TV. If you ask them, hey, I thought you wanted to go and get into shape and go exercise and do whatever, that's not necessarily forcing them to do whatever you feel like that you would do if you were in their position. That's just trying to get them to be in line with what they expressed. And I think in particular, when you say that you support certain progressive ideas, but you vote for a candidate that does not support those ideas, that is actually antithetical to those ideas or antithetical to those policies, period, it's hard for me to say that you really do support that. And if you really don't support it, if you really don't think it's important, that's fine. But don't say it's really important and then you vote against it. Don't say you believe in something, but every time you turn around, you're voting against it. And that's what I'm trying to get people to realize. Like, you can't say you're for aggressive action on climate change, but you go and vote for a candidate that ignores climate change altogether, or that has a policy platform that really does not address climate change. Same thing for healthcare, same thing for, financial regulation, whatever is your issue. It could be anything. But I'm just saying, be in line with what you believe in is what I'm trying to get people to see. And I think there's a difference between forcing some pledge down someone's throat. I also want to take a second. There was a comment that said Bernie Sanders is passive aggressive in how he's tackling other issues. I have to agree. Sometimes he's strong on some things and sometimes he's not strong on others. And this is definitely one, like I said, the optics of it, it's just really bad. Like, you can't be bad mouthing the voting process when you're a candidate in the race. It just comes off as being a sore loser. I mean, the only exception would be like when you're doing like a recount or something like that, where it's clear that it's been stolen. Then you can be as vocal as you want to because the evidence is on your side. But in this situation, it's just a lot. It's just really, really tough. I think the optics to be complaining about the voting process while you're a candidate that's in the voting process.
Well, yeah. It's also the difficulty of complaining about the party that you've chosen to be a part of. I mean, he has walked a very interesting path in this election. But no, I agree, and I do think that it is true that he is. I think because Bernie Sanders is a certain type of person. He doesn't want to be perceived a certain way, and anytime he does anything that might be seen as aggressive, he's attacking her or he's sexist. If he says the wrong thing, then he's a racist. I mean, it's just a never-ending thing. So I feel like at this point, he is picking and choosing his battles and making sure he can cover as much ground as possible. Because quite honestly, regardless of what we think about his chances are going forward, stranger things have happened. Anything is still possible. We are still alive and kicking and moving forward. So I'm all in until he wins or we're figured out our plan B. But as of right now, I'm still on plan A, which is Bernie in the nomination. And I think that is best where our energy is spent for the moment instead of speculating. Is there no excitement on this thread for Fiorina's candidacy? That is the other. I was hoping y'all wouldn't notice that. Yes. So today, Ted Cruz made the grand announcement that Carly Fiorina is going to be his running mate. Yay, a woman. Where's all the I'm with her crowd? Like, we get a woman finally. Whoop, whoop. No, right? She had a very funny tweet earlier about capitalists and people exploiting, people in the economy. And it was so interesting because she's a former CEO of a Fortune 500 company talking about people exploiting capital and defrauding the economy.
Let me say something about that. HP, I live in Houston, and they have a base out here, out 249 in Cypress. It's one of their larger complexes. They have a huge complex. And HP is probably one of the worst tech companies you can ever work for. Like, I mean, they get those new college graduates, and they work them like a dog and don't pay them anything. It is horrible. Horrible. And then they're constantly laying off and just replacing people with college graduates. It's like a revolving door over there. So I don't know. HP is just not a very good company to work for, is what I'd say. All the restructuring, all the layoffs, they've had hundreds of thousands of layoffs, and I think they had like 500,000 employees at one point. So it's just not a good place. I don't think that they got rid of her because she really wasn't doing that well. I just don't think that Carly Fiorina, by any stretch of the imagination, is worth her salt in when it comes to talking about, business and how business should be run, or how good companies treat people or how bad companies treat people, because her record is, spurious at best.
Um, now you're not being very nice. She's a woman, so we have to be nice to the women. We have to support women, and
I said
it's all
spurious.
about making sure that it's all about making sure women candidates. We need to stand with our sisters, because there's a special place in hell for women who do not support other women, unless you're a black woman named Donna Edwards and you're going up against the Maryland elite and the Democratic establishment. Now I know not everyone agrees, but there are quite a few of us who are pretty miffed about the hypocrisy, basically, right? We have been getting it shoved down our throat for. I probably am going to hell, you know what I'm saying? And if I'm not already in hell with the rest of you, then I'm definitely in purgatory right now. I'm not really sure. But, and Palin, okay, well, I don't know about that. But I think it's problematic when we have the same people that will use the rhetoric that we have to support a woman. It's all about getting a woman in there. The importance of, breaking down barriers and historical first and the women's perspective, but then we have the same people who could leverage that power, right? Leverage that sisterhood, so to speak, right? And when you look at the fact that black women are the most loyal Democratic voters, as black women, we make up a larger percentage proportionately of those who are active and engaged as Democratic voters, overwhelmingly supporting Hillary Clinton. We are. Sheila Jackson Lee declared that she was a sister, right? She's down with the squad. She's so down with the squad that when she had the opportunity to support one of the women that supported her, now we hear a lot of flack, right? Everyone's like, well, why didn't Bernie endorse Fetterman? Fetterman endorsed him. Why didn't Bernie do this? No one dares question why Hillary Clinton did not support Donna Edwards. Donna Edwards, early. And we can argue about whether it was smart for her. I've seen some people on Twitter complain that, well, she should have backed Bernie. What would have backing Bernie have done? Like, seriously, what would backing Bernie have done for her? I'm really asking honestly. What would you all who are Bernie supporters who did not even support her or vote for her, what would that have done for Donna Edwards? When you look at the challenge, especially as black women, like I said, we are the backbone of the damn Democratic Party. So when you think that you have a good platform, you're a woman, particularly in the year of the woman, we're all strong, and, I am woman, hear me roar. She thought she had a lot. Just like 2 weeks ago, she was up over her opponent. Until, the establishment came crashing down, the CBC was like, nah, we ain't trying to mess with you. And basically, he was an establishment pick. He also there was that big Sabin money that came down, that big pro-Israel donation that was made against her, basically, because she's a little too, nice on the Palestinian front. You also had the fact that she didn't play ball. She didn't follow the hierarchy within side. She's not like Cory Booker and the Castro twins sitting in the corner playing nice until someone finally decides it's their turn to play on the big stage. She was like, bump y'all, I'm going to do this now on my own. Again, whether you particularly care for her or not, but, could there have been some benefit to her working with the working with Bernie campaign? I don't know that the campaign was even set up when she announced in May to help anyone else, right? In May when Bernie announced, I don't know that he thought he would still be here come a year later, so to speak. There's a really great blog that I follow. It's Three Chicks Politico. And, it just lays it out perfectly, because it just lays out perfectly. Maryland has this huge black population, this huge black Democratic population, and there is not one, except for Elijah Cummings, there's no one else, no other black person, that won a race, like nothing. And when do we get to the point where we're going to leverage our vote for something versus just getting bragging rights that we're on the winning team? What does it matter to be on the winning team if we don't have anybody sitting at the table?
Well, see,
you know what I'm saying?
I was going to say,
go ahead.
This is the argument that I always come up with all the time. People ask me, why do I think this or that, or why is this demographic voting this way or that way? And to be honest with you, we've had this argument, back and forth, and it just
Yeah.
has really shown that I always thought that maybe, the next time we have a progressive war, that they should be, a person of color or, a minority, preferably a female of color, to carry the message. That way some of the weapons that they've used against Bernie Sanders would not be as effective. But I really look at that race and I'm like, well, I think it really comes down to we have to have something strong enough to battle the media spin. I just think the media spin is very strong and it's very effective with with certain demographics in general. It's something we just have to come to terms with, and I think that election in particular, is like really indicative of that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree definitely. And before we run out of time, I just want to thank everyone for coming to join us. I know you're used to seeing Ben's handsome face on Wednesday night, so thank you very much for hanging in. Also, if you like what you see, check out some more of the videos. Please like and subscribe. Help Ben, the Benjamin Dixon Show, get to 10,000 subscribers. Also, if you are feeling like fabulous and awesome and want to donate to progressive media, become a Patreon. Consider supporting the Benjamin Dixon Show. The Progressive Army, you guys go check out progressivearmy.com. Awesome source. We have a team of fantastic writers. Shout out to the live production staff who are keeping us on track this evening. Yeah, I mean, it is really interesting. I guess someone else brought up, this is the second or third time Kamala Harris has been brought up. I think there's a difference. If you happen to be one of the chosen ones, if you're anointed, and we agree that it's your time, we're going to let you run your race, but you have to wait over there. Like, I think that we need to break out of that. Who gets to decide? Why do you get to decide whether or not I'm good enough to run because you have the person you want to put forward? I think in her case in California, I don't think that there is a establishment darling that they want her to stand out the way for. I think she is the darling that they're hoping for. I think that's maybe the difference in California versus Maryland. Donna Edwards has yes, I'm very excited about Carly Fiorina. I'm excited. I'm excited about her. She's fabulous. Really. No, but seriously, though, I really do. I think having Carly, if they were to run and actually get the nomination or whatever, I think that it would definitely put the hypocrisy of what it is to have women involved. It would definitely put it on its head because we saw that before. I'm not a fan of Sarah Palin's. But still, we cannot, we can't say, oh, we have to treat women this way. Women have to be respected. Oh, my God, this is sexist. But we don't call it out across the board. That's one of the things that I do not particularly care for in all of this. So I'm not sure what happened to Stacy. Hopefully she'll be able to join us before we go. But I wanted to, oh, wait, Stacy, you're here.
Yes, I'm here, darling.
Yay!
I'm sorry. I left you a voicemail. I guess you didn't get it.
No, I did not. No, you're fine. Thank you so much. Everyone, you guys have seen Stacy before if you've watched with me before. Stacy Hopkins is here to talk to us about brand new Congress
Yes.
and moving forward. So let's chat.
Yeah, let's talk
Stacy,
about it.
next Stacy.
How you doing?
Hey, Nick. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm really excited to hear more about this. I'm going to kind of take the devil's advocate, so I'm going to ask some questions.
Okay.
Let's start off with, kind of explaining to our audience and everybody that hasn't had a time to read about it, what you guys are trying to accomplish and what is the main drive.
Well, it's a couple of people coming off of the Bernie 2016 campaign who, and a lot of volunteers that we identified that throughout the campaign that were dedicated and we're asking the question, what next? We are saying, okay, we don't have the silver bullet, but this is part of the solution. We all know Congress is dysfunctional. We all know the impact that it has on our lives. So, and nothing can get done because nothing can move through Congress. So we're focusing on that, and we have a crazy idea pretty simple. One plan, one campaign, it's basically occupying Congress, 535 seats. We're not going to, it's not a revolt where we're going to throw everybody out, but we want to bring, a lot of people came together because of the Bernie platform, and we want to make sure that we have representation that adequately reflects that. So we're going to try to achieve a couple of things. Women are underrepresented. People of color are underrepresented in Congress. We can help achieve racial and uh, gender parity in Congress. So this is something we're trying to put together using the grassroots power. We saw what it could do. We saw the energy and the passion and the talents and skills that it brought. So we're taking some of that and putting it together and creating this new project that we hope everybody will get on board with. We need, we simply need a honest, accountable Congress, as we say on the website. Things have gotten to the point where, we're frustrated. We've seen a lot of things during the campaign that we know we need to fix. And our campaigns and how they operate are one of them. So.
Now, see, there's nothing there that I even have a question about. I'm in 100% full agreement with what you said.
Well, good. But.
Oh, no, there is no but. It's just moving on to the next question.
Yay, yay.
Yeah, there's no but there. What I want to know is, so is this gonna align with a particular party? Or are you gonna be challenging, Democrats and Republicans alike? What is the strategy moving forward as like your first ground step, or the people who you're targeting to replace?
Well, we have the Bernie platform, and we see how that platform, not only it was a progressive platform, but as we can see through polling, a lot of Americans on either side of the aisle actually agree with progressive policy. It's just that we've had that word vilified in the public sphere, and so it has these connotations that it's a ultra far left, policy that's not fiscally conservative, or there'll be all these other excuses for it. Anyone who is willing to align, we've got a platform that Bernie has laid out through his campaign that gives us a template. We're asking, we don't really care, and we are not aligning with any party. This is the Get Right campaign. It is time for folks to get right, and there is just the reality that in districts that are heavily gerrymandered and conservative, that there may not even be, you may not be able to run a Democrat in that district, but you may have Republicans, because believe it or not, people, I know it's very hard for some progressives and people on the left to understand, but there are some conservatives who do agree with progressive policy. They do want immigration reform. They do want to address inequality with poverty and creating jobs. And there are ways. There are some who believe in climate change, but they are just as trapped and battling the same system that we are. So we are actually debating that and fleshing that out. Nothing's really firm, but we have to face some realities about the political landscape across the country. One of the things we'll try to do is identify candidates. We want people who have not been inside the system, people who have shown that they have some backbone. They may not have political experience. Actually, we prefer that. But those who know they can make a difference and they want to run, and they know that they want to make change in this political sphere. So what we are creating is a platform for candidates to run under, to allow candidates to do what they do best. Right now, candidates are caught in that hamster wheel of raising money, in order to, you can't run for this race unless you have X amount millions. So you're constantly on the phones, and you're hustling for that dollar, and you're using tactics that aren't really getting your platform across. You're just winning a race, and we're getting screwed. We're getting bad people making bad policy because they're not in it for me. You're in there for the hustle. Mm-hmm. And we've reached a tipping point. So, I guess some people will see it as some sort of progressive Tea Party, but this is people from all sides. We've seen people, independents, conservatives, and progressives resonate to Bernie's message and say, yeah, we can get in on this and get, something going. So we're going to see what happens. Democrats, we're just kind of like, it's not like you didn't see this coming. We asked you nicely. So, I mean, if you want it, you got to fight for it. This is Sparta, baby. You want our votes? You need to come get them.
So I think what you're talking about is very important because I think it kind of gets people out of the cult of personality. We already know how that can be used to people to
Mm-hmm.
kind of glaze people's eyes over and make them, not see the ugly truth. Like you said, when these individuals are in office and they're really fundraising most of the time and they're just kind of just trying to get those dollars to keep coming in, and there's a lot of people that have come to them and maybe their child can go and get into Harvard without the grades. Maybe their child will get a job, working for some company, making a large sum of money and not have to do anything. Maybe when they leave Congress, they'll be taken into one of these companies as a consultant or something, and they'll get their payday based off of their service to those companies while they're in office. And I think that as of right now, we all have to confront that whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, the game is the game, and this is what's being played.
Right.
And the label shouldn't necessarily protect somebody from the public scrutiny about this. So I'm really 100% glad that you guys are really pushing the platform and not someone's personality. And I think that's kind of where politics kind of gets a little hairy. People get stuck in the personality and not necessarily the policy aspect. So this is really, really, really good.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. We want to avoid that. We actually are looking for everyday people. If we want Congress to be able to understand our interests and what most Americans are going through, it needs to represent us. So we are looking for people who are leaders in their community who are ready to take that leap. But we're also building a support team behind them because we recognize, yeah, a lot of people have worked on campaigns or have done this type of work before, and we recognize that candidates are often left out in the wind, and they can win. Alex Law is showing how you can win with
Mm-hmm.
very little money by really maximizing your resources and planning. But you have to have support behind them, and we talk. A lot of us, we can tell you war stories of candidates who have run for office, and it's basically, once they qualify, it's like, okay, well, go forth and prosper. But people are stepping up and saying, toys ain't us. We ain't playing, and
So Stacy,
we being the change.
so Stacy, can you just give us just a little, just kind of who are the players involved a little bit, and kind of what are we looking at in terms of initial steps, kind of a brief timeline. You guys go check out the website. I've dropped the link a
Yes.
couple times in the chat because there's a lot of information there, and there's also a Facebook page. But definitely go to the website because that will definitely be the main source of information. You can sign up for more information. Um,
Yes.
and I know we talked about maybe hosting community parties or get-togethers, or so. Like, what are we thinking about?
Yes. Yes, if you go to our website, brandnewcongress.org, and there's a timeline that goes into how we're going to try and pull this thing off. So, and it does seem overwhelming, but one of the things we're going to do is what I'm doing right now, putting this idea out there, talking to people who are passionate, who have been asking that question, what do we do next? We don't propose to have everything, and we're pulling something off that we're trying to hit every congressional district in the country. So it is very important to tap into that grassroots, and the grassroots has either brought out or developed a lot of skills in people that can be put to use after the presidential campaign is over. So we are looking for people willing to get together in their communities. We will come out. We're planning a barnstorming tour that's going to start in May and run through June. We're asking people to, because you know your community best. you know these people who are perhaps have qualities that make them a great leader in the community. And we want to try and convince these people to run. So volunteers are very essential to this project because you know these people, you deal with them, they're your neighbors, they're, colleagues, it can be you. But if it's anyone who wants to take that leap, we're going to try to get together. And out of these meetings, also we want to establish search committees because that also helps form the infrastructure. Because you're going to tell us give us information on who's running, giving us the initial research so that we can go through a process of vetting a candidate and seeing what we can do to help them.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a crucial part. It's something like what the Bernie campaign did, and we're going to do things a little different by empowering people from the start. We saw with the Bernie campaign, a lot of people were disappointed because the offices got opened up rather late, and it really could have helped volunteers to have a space. So we will also be opening up offices early and getting the tools in people's hands. So we've got a lot of stuff going on and a lot of great people working with us to put this together. But once again, with any organization, the most valuable power we could have is volunteers. Anyone will tell you, you really, really need that energy and passion to help bring it together. We saw what it did with OFA, electing President Obama. We've seen it with the Bernie movement. So we're going to keep this going, or I should say revolution. So we're going to try and keep this going in a direction. It's more of a political track. It may not be for everybody, but some people, they've got bitten by the bug, and we'd love to talk to them, and we'll come out and see you and get you to work and start organizing.
2 things from the chat room. One, it said brand new Congress lawn signs. I think people want lawn signs, and it seems like it's going over very well in the chat room. Like everyone I talked to so far about this is like really excited. I know there are other initiatives that people have started up, but like this one really seems to have a real plan, some teeth, and people who have some firsthand knowledge of what it takes to go around the country and actually set up, these types of events and stuff, and relationships with candidates. The question we had though was, so as the progressive movement figures a way forward, does a Hillary Clinton presidency give you fertile ground for the cause to flourish?
It really doesn't matter. I mean, whoever's president is really, in terms of us organizing, but I think once we accomplish this, if we manage to get a lot of candidates to run and say take over the House, the Congress would be the check and balance. So it would depend on, I really can't say that Hillary's presidency, we would have to just deal with whatever comes up. But no matter what happens, who's in office, we're going to keep organizing, because what we're creating here is something that can be duplicated for those on the local and state level. It's basically would be the same concept to do it. So this is really good to perhaps provide a template. But in terms of Hillary, we just got to wait and see what happens. We have to be a check and balance on that anyway. That's what we're supposed to be doing.
Right. And even Bernie said that himself. I said this last night. I'll say it again. Like at the town hall when he got asked about OFA and how do you lead a movement and be president. I mean, let's be clear. He's never been our leader. He's been our inspiration. He's been motivation.
Right.
But there are leaders rising up from the ranks themselves to lead all this. And regardless, even if Bernie is president, right, we still have to have that check and balance. We still need to make sure that we're holding people accountable and we're providing the support. As I say this all the time, all those people that have stepped out there to support Bernie Sanders, like whether they're up-and-coming people trying to run for office, people already in office, we need to make sure we have their back. We need to make sure that we're supporting the people who supported us when it mattered, and that they know that we're not going to let them down, because it has been a lot for some people in some areas. We've seen that with some folks here in Georgia, that people were basically being silenced, right? Or threatened with, you're not going to be able to run again, you're going to lose this position. I mean, it happens all over the place. So we need to make sure we're about this life. Well, you need to make sure you're about it all the way through come election day for some of these different races. And don't just go vote. Help out if you can, because that's really what makes a difference. We want politicians to be accountable to us. That we need to create an environment where they're able to. We need to help them build their team, right? We have a lot of 2016 candidates right now, and I know obviously this project is looking more long term. But do you have any thoughts or advice just for some of these, races that are coming up in the next several weeks, couple of months, like things we can possibly do just in the short game, so to speak?
For local candidates, they're staggered across the country, so there are primaries coming up on your local and state level. If you see someone, what they need just like anybody, and even us, because in order to pull this off, we need donations. And whatever the small dollar donations really pile up. But donating to these candidates, lending your time, going canvassing, doing phone banking, if you can hold a fundraiser for them, anything you can do to help them out, do sign-in waves, and just call them up and offer your help, and know who you're voting for. Before you go in the voting booth, hit Ballotpedia. That's one of the best websites out there. Open Congress will give you a lot of information on your districts and your congressional district. So, being an educated voter, that's another way you can help candidates, because you'll know who you're voting for. And for judicial elections, there's Judgepedia. So those are two links that people can do. But the same thing you're doing for Bernie, all candidates need that. And so any way you can help, and go to candidate forums, host one if you're a part of an organization, and just give. A lot of candidates need opportunity to get their word out, and that's why independent media like this is very important, because a lot of people are getting turned on to folks that usually wouldn't pop up on their radar.
Yeah, I want to make a point that if you're getting most of your news from mainstream media, you are getting a very filtered, narrow worldview that is probably really affecting how you view things and see things. And I would encourage everyone to try to venture out and break free of that, and try to get as much independent media as they can to get a different perspective on what's going on and what's happening in our world and in our daily lives, and especially in politics, because there's a spin that can be put on almost anything that can make up look down, and red be blue, and all that. So it's very important to kind of broaden your horizons on information. But what I really like about what you guys are doing is you guys are bringing back a competitive spirit of democracy. Like, without a competitive democracy, if it's like kind of stagnant, that's really where you get a lot of the corruption and things that really comes down, because there's no sense of urgency, there's no accountability there, because they feel like they have it locked. So there's a stagnation, and with that stagnation comes the corruption.
Absolutely. This tackles money in politics, and I think that is the wall that we all run up against. And so it's helping a lot of issues in one swoop by addressing Congress and trying to get that blockage in our system out of the way. The system is not working because we've got some defective parts. So this is a remedy for that. So I'm really excited about it. And it's Zach Exley. He was a former senior advisor to the Bernie 2016 campaign. Corbin Trent, one of the organizers with the Bernie campaign, and a few other people. Some are still active with Bernie, volunteering, but we're going to see what we can do to kick this off, and we'd love to have everybody join us. Go to the website, brandnewcongress.org. You can see the plan, the timeline. Also, you can donate. We're gearing up, as I said, for this tour, and we're going to try to stay as self-sufficient as we can but and help get people out there to do these. Initially, it'll be Corbin, Zach, and myself, but more people will be coming on board, I'm sure, and as we grow. But we want to come out and see you, so if you can donate $3, $5, $10, don't make me beg. But no, if you like what you see and want to keep us going, help us out because we see how that works. And you saw the power of like Lucy Flores with her fundraising appeal from Bernie. That was all small dollars. We can fight big money, and we don't have to get nasty to do it. We just have to get smarter. And there's power in those little dollars. They add up. So we need to start learning how to wield our power a little better, and we see how we can do that. We can go toe to toe with big money on the dollar game.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Thank you so much,
Well,
Stacey. Everybody. Well, yeah. So yeah, I get. So I mean, for those who haven't seen us before, Stacey, I call Stacey my organizing mentor because when I was lost in the land at my very beginning, earlier on, back last summer, trying to figure out what to do about Bernie, I found this fabulous woman, Stacey Hopkins, who knows all about what it is to be an organizer and energizer and motivator. And thank you because I've learned so much for you. So yeah, I'll
well, thanks for having me. And I love you.
But I appreciate you so much, and thank you, Nick, for. One of these days, Nick corrected me. I'm going to apologize on here. Nick corrected me on something because I was so upset and aggravated with everybody and the we need to just be Green Party. And let's be clear, I don't have anything against the Green Party. My only issue is, one, I haven't given up yet. I'm still very much focused and active and engaged. Bernie's in Indiana. We have Indiana next week. We have all these different, elections still in the pipeline. New Jersey, Indiana, California. There's so many places still left to vote. We still have a very strong case to be made. So that's what my focus is. My focus is not trying to figure out how to build up someone else's campaign at the moment. So Nick and I, but I did incorrectly earlier get very angry and list a whole bunch of states that the Green Party was not active in, and it turns out in my rage this morning, I read the map wrong. So see, I can admit I was wrong. I was wrong. Nick was right. One of these days, Nick and I'm going to do some more research. One of these days, yeah, I needed the Snickers earlier today. One of these days, Nick and I are going to have a debate, and y'all can come and check us out. But tune in tomorrow, BPD show. Benjamin Dixon will be back and in the house, and I'm sure he'll have a great show lined up for you. He is at the David Packman studio this evening, learning how to use all the fancy new equipment once he moves over next week. Very exciting. Subscribe, become a Patreon if you're so moved. Like, share, hit us up on Twitter, Progressive Army, the Benjamin Dixon, the BPD show, and Miss Nono ESQ. Nick, how can I get you on Twitter?
Oh, I'm at SlickNickX. Also, before we close it down, let me bring up. Don't forget to become a Patreon of the Benjamin Dixon Show. Any donations really help towards furthering our goals. So I just want to mention that because I know we always try to put an advertisement in every episode.
Yeah.
Awesome. And Stacey, how can they reach you on Twitter?
Definitely support you. Oh, you can reach me at Stacey Hopkins, STACEYHOPKINSGA, and Brand New Congress. It's Brand New 535.
Okay, and also you can find Stacey on Twitter at DSD Radio. Stacey is the co-host of the Down South and Dirty Radio program. Sundays, Blog Talk Radio, 2 p.m. I do a little segment on there. I think we're going to revamp it. But definitely appreciate all of you guys, the burn treatment. I appreciate all of you guys for coming out this evening. I just want to say that, to paraphrase Liz Brown, and I'll let everybody go. But to paraphrase Liz Brown, we need to stop, being just a meal that's put on the table, basically, when it's time to have the big party. And we need to work on, having our own damn table, having our own seat at a table. We need to just stop just letting people just take our vote. We're not deliverables. You know what I'm saying? We're a movement. We're people. We have power to be leveraged. We have a voice to be heard. And we have a plan to put in motion. So I appreciate everybody for hanging out tonight. Thank you so much. Thank you. Shout out to the Live Pro for doing what you always do so well. And shout out to the rest of the Progressive Army for holding it down. Y'all go check out progressivearmy.com. And we are done. So
all right.
Y'all continue the conversation. You guys come join us on Facebook. Progressive Army is Facebook chat room or group. Come check us out on Facebook. Hit us up on Twitter. You know, however you want to do it. We're going to start trying to roll out and do some. I think, Nick, you're going to roll out. I don't know if you decided what you're going to call it yet.
Not yet. No way.
So Nick's still working on the name for his segment as well. But definitely check us out. You know, who knows? Maybe we'll start doing some periscopes every once in a while to continue some of these conversations that people are having.
That sounds good.
And again, it's not an issue that we're not willing to talk about the issues that are happening or even some of the shortcomings. Trust and believe, we're probably one of the only sources we're going to get an honest assessment of what's going on and what's going wrong. But we need to spend time looking forward. So I appreciate everybody for coming out. Good night.
Good night.